Hey folks, welcome back to List Lord. Today, we're diving into the world of U.S. presidents who really brought their game when it came to economic growth. That's right. We're talking about the top 10 commanders-in-chief who didn't just sit behind the desk, but made serious strides in boosting the nation's economy. Let's jump right in. The 90s, a decade of boy bands, flannel shirts, and economic prosperity. Yep, that's right. The economic boom of the 90s was not just a happy accident. Bill Clinton played a huge role in it. With a background in law and a smooth political style, Clinton was all about making deals, balancing budgets, and keeping things efficient. The man took over during a recession and left with a budget surplus, a rare feat for any president. Clinton's administration saw one of the longest periods of economic expansion in American history, lasting 120 months. He managed to balance the budget for 4 straight years, the first time that had happened since the late 1960s. Plus, the economy added over 20 million jobs during his presidency, and the tech boom was in full swing. Let's not forget NAFTA, which created a massive trading bloc in North America. Clinton's ability to manage the economy while creating a surplus is a rare accomplishment. The booming tech sector and low unemployment rates made the U.S. economy flourish, giving many Americans the prosperity of a golden age. Now, here's a guy who knew how to play the long game. Dwight D. Eisenhower was not just a 5-star general who helped win World War II. He also had a strategic mind that worked wonders for the U.S. economy. He believed in stability, and you can see that in the infrastructure projects that sprang up during his presidency. Ever wonder why you can drive coast to coast on highways? Thank Eisenhower. Eisenhower's vision of connecting America resulted in the interstate highway system, one of the most transformative infrastructure projects ever. This not only provided thousands of jobs, but also facilitated trade and travel across the nation. He kept inflation low, promoted balanced budgets, and focused on long-term growth over short-term gains. That's why he was able to maintain economic stability throughout his 2 terms. Eisenhower's focus on infrastructure not only gave the U.S. its iconic highways, but also boosted the economy through job creation and improved trade routes. When you think of the 1980s, what comes to mind? Big hair, neon colors. How about Reaganomics? Ronald Reagan did not just star in movies, he starred in the economy with his bold, controversial policies that aimed to transform the American financial landscape. Reagan's strategy, dubbed Reaganomics, emphasized tax cuts, deregulation, and a massive increase in defense spending. While critics argue about its long-term effects, there's no denying the short-term success. Inflation dropped, the stock market soared, and GDP growth picked up steam. Reagan's tax cuts were some of the biggest in U.S. history, and they helped drive consumer spending and business investment. Reagan took the U.S. from a period of stagflation to robust growth. His tax cuts, though debated, led to a booming economy in the 80s. JFK was not just about charming speeches and moon missions. He also had a bold vision for the American economy. His economic plan, known as New Frontier, was all about stimulating growth and encouraging innovation. JFK's administration laid the groundwork for what would become one of the most prosperous periods in U.S. history. He proposed and enacted significant tax cuts that would encourage investment and consumer spending. The Kennedy tax cuts laid the groundwork for the boom of the 1960s, and his focus on science and technology helped fuel growth, especially in sectors like aerospace and defense. JFK's economic policies helped spark a new wave of growth and modernization. His focus on tax cuts and investment in technology spurred a mini-boom that set the stage for the 1960s prosperity. Lyndon B. Johnson, LBJ for short, he is the guy who stepped in after JFK's assassination and decided to double down on economic progress. LBJ had a vision he called the Great Society, which was all about reducing poverty, improving education, and ensuring civil rights. But alongside these social reforms, he was also super focused on the economy. During his term, the economy grew at an impressive rate. Johnson's economic policies, which included tax cuts and increased government spending, boosted job creation and lifted millions out of poverty. He pushed forward initiatives like Medicare, Medicaid, and federal aid for education, which helped stimulate economic growth by increasing consumer spending and creating more jobs. LBJ's efforts to reduce poverty while stimulating economic growth were groundbreaking. His policies led to one of the most significant expansions in U.S. history, and the Great Society initiatives laid the foundation for better health and education. When it comes to economic challenges, Franklin D. Roosevelt faced the Mount Everest of them all, the Great Depression. Coming into office at a time when the country's economy was at its absolute worst, FDR rolled up his sleeves and got to work, his secret weapon, the New Deal. FDR's New Deal was a series of programs, public work projects, and financial reforms that aimed to get America back on its feet. He believed in using government resources to stimulate the economy by creating jobs and building infrastructure. From Social Security to banking regulations, FDR's policies helped stabilize the economy, and by the time he left office, the U.S. was poised for a post-World War II economic boom. FDR's innovative approach to tackling the Great Depression helped save America from economic collapse. His policies created jobs, increased consumer confidence, and ultimately laid the foundation for post-war prosperity. "Speak softly and carry a big stick," said Theodore Roosevelt, and when it came to the economy, he did not just talk, he acted. Teddy took over at a time when big corporations were running the show, and the economy was more wild than the Wild West. He was a firm believer in fair play, competition, and, yes, regulating big business. Teddy's focus was on trust-busting. He broke up monopolies to ensure a fairer economy, making sure that smaller businesses could thrive. The construction of the Panama Canal also boosted trade and shipping, which helped grow the economy. Plus, his conservation efforts were not just about nature, they led to job creation and sustainable industry practices. Theodore Roosevelt's policies helped level the economic playing field by busting monopolies and promoting competition. His infrastructure projects, like the Panama Canal, were game changers for trade and industry. Let's move to a president who took on economic reform with a scholarly approach: Woodrow Wilson. He was not just a president, he was an academic, and his policies reflected that meticulous mindset. Wilson believed that for an economy to thrive, it needed fairness, transparency, and effective banking. So, he set out to create a stronger financial framework. Wilson introduced the Federal Reserve System, which is essentially the backbone of the U.S. banking system today. He also supported antitrust legislation to curb monopolies and ensure healthy competition. Plus, the introduction of the income tax provided the federal government with a reliable revenue stream, which meant more stability and growth. Wilson's establishment of the Federal Reserve fundamentally reshaped U.S. finance, bringing stability and growth that lasted beyond his term. Taking over after FDR's passing, Harry Truman had the unenviable job of leading the country through the end of World War II and into peacetime. But Truman wasn't one to back down from a challenge. He played a key role in the reconstruction of Europe, which, in turn, had a huge positive impact on the U.S. economy. Truman's administration was responsible for the Marshall Plan, a massive aid program to rebuild Europe. While this might seem like giving money away, it actually spurred U.S. manufacturing and boosted trade. Domestically, Truman supported the Fair Deal, which aimed to improve housing, healthcare, and education. This meant more jobs and a growing economy. Truman's post-war strategies did not just help rebuild Europe. They reinvigorated American industry and trade, leading to a major economic boom. And now, we have arrived at number 1, Abraham Lincoln. You might know him as the president who ended slavery, but Lincoln was also a champion for economic growth. During the Civil War, he took steps to modernize the economy, and his decisions have left a legacy that still benefits the U.S. today. Lincoln's most notable economic move: the establishment of a national banking system and currency. Before this, states had their own banks and notes, which caused chaos. By creating a unified banking system, Lincoln ensured smoother trade and commerce across the country. He also promoted the construction of the Transcontinental Railroad, which opened up trade routes and spurred economic growth across the nation. Lincoln's strategic thinking during one of the darkest periods in American history did not just keep the economy alive, it restructured it. He introduced a national currency, stabilized financial institutions, expanded infrastructure, and created opportunities for millions of Americans. The Transcontinental Railroad, national banking, and Homestead Act had lasting effects that propelled the U.S. into the modern era. Without Lincoln's groundwork, the U.S. might not have emerged as the world's leading economy. His ability to push through major reforms, even amid the chaos of war, makes him the ultimate economic reformer. And here we are at the ultimate top spot, where we find none other than the founding father himself, George Washington. The OG of U.S. presidents, Washington's economic policies laid the very foundation of what would become one of the most powerful economies in the world. Why is he ranked above everyone else? Well, without Washington's steady hand, there probably would not even be a list to make. As the first president, he set a precedent, pun intended, for managing a brand new nation's finances, debts, and economic stability. With the help of Treasury Secretary Alexander Hamilton, Washington's administration introduced measures like federal taxation and national debt management, creating the economic scaffolding that future administrations would build upon. From developing a national banking system to advocating for tariffs to boost domestic production, Washington's era saw the groundwork laid for centuries of growth. And let's face it, starting a new nation from scratch is not easy, but Washington made it look like a piece of cake. Washington's rank at the top reflects not just his achievements, but the very fact that he set the stage for all future presidents. From balancing the nation's first budgets to creating revenue streams, he had to start from nothing and lead America into financial sovereignty. So, whether it's about leadership, vision, or sheer grit, Washington deserves this top rank, no arguments. There you have it, folks, our list of the top 10 U.S. presidents for economic growth. Which was your favorite POTUS in history? Let us know in the comments section below. From tax cuts to trust busting, and from war recovery to banking reforms, these leaders made decisions that shaped the economy for decades to come.